In June 1970, I graduated from the High School of Music and Art, finishing just a few dozen people from the bottom of a very sizable class. I was in fact amazed that I had graduated at all, given how little I had shown up to class. Graduating was a mixed blessing. I was glad to have school behind me, but I was scared shitless about being drafted. The Vietnam War was in full swing, and the last thing I wanted was to be drafted. I didn't need to go to Vietnam any more than I needed to take acid. During years of building fear, I had managed to accumulate some medical documentation of various problems, like back pain and other things I'd seen a doctor about. One day I went down to Whitehall Street in Lower Manhattan with my draft card for induction. They reviewed my records and quickly dismissed me. All my fears, the years I spent anguishing over being sent to Vietnam, had been for nothing. I told my parents the great news, how I had taken all my medical records to prove I wasn't fit for service. They looked at each other quizzically and said, "Didn't you know you can't be drafted?" "Why?" I asked. "You're deaf in one ear." Aha! Shocked, I thought of all the times I had brought up the subject of the draft during high school. Every male approaching draft age was concerned with what was to come. I had made my fears clear to my parents on many occasions. That was one fear they could have laid to rest for me if they had ever told me I was ineligible for the draft. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I asked. They turned to each other, looked back at me, and shrugged their shoulders. 10 more points for my parents. It was true that I couldn't tell the direction of sound, but I had never put two and two together, and nobody else had ever put two and two together for me. At that time, New York State had decided to make college available to any resident, and I thought that despite my bravado about making a career in music, I had better apply to the city college system. I had already stacked the deck so much against myself, maybe this new opportunity could be the safety net I might still need. Since I hadn't taken any of the preliminary tests and I had terrible grades, I was admitted to Bronx Community College. I got a student loan and promptly used it to buy a second-hand blue Plymouth Fury to replace my broken-down Rambler. When I showed up for the first week of classes, I didn't think many of the people looked like what I considered college material. They probably thought the same about me. Despite the change of scenery, college quickly proved to be a continuation of everything I had hated about school. I still had the same basic problem. I couldn't hear well enough to follow what was going on. And it wasn't as if classes took up an hour a day. I was supposed to be there nearly all day. And then there were the assignments on top of that. When I thought about the time I would have to devote to college, I began to see it as an obstruction. I was willing to put that much time and more into reaching my goal, but this wasn't helping me to do that. In fact, it was detracting mightily from it. It made it impossible, and for what? I was never going to succeed in the classroom. It was just a waste of time, and time, I reasoned, was the most precious thing I had. This is just more of the same. I don't belong here. This is not for me. I thought about the new band, the fact that I was no longer going it on my own. I thought about the ideas I had discussed with Gene, about getting a full-time rehearsal space. Sure, Gene had grown up an only child, his mother telling him he was God's gift to the world, and Gene believing it. Sure, he had his quirks, but then again we had real chemistry, and the two of us together were much stronger than either of us on his own. We had a battle plan. This is not for me. To leave yourself no plan B is a dangerous thing to do, but going to college was taking away from my focus. For a band, focus was success. I needed to live it 24 hours a day, not just nights and weekends. Wasting time at Bronx Community College was sabotaging what I was trying to accomplish. I had my Plymouth now, which meant I had transportation to get to and from rehearsals at all hours. This is not for